Welcome, everyone. My name is Paul Cohen, and I'm Anita's brother-in-law, the brother of Kel. Anita passed away on the 23rd of September after a 5-year battle with cancer. She was only 58 years old. Anita was predeceased by her father, Leiomyosarcoma, in 2000. Leaving to mourn her loss is her husband, Kel, mother, Hermine, her sister, Henna, her brothers, Ivan, Jerry, Humphrey, and Arnie, along with each of their own families. The following documentary of Anita's life reminds us of the words of the Bible writer Job. At Job 14, verses 14 and 15, he asked Jehovah God an interesting question. If a man dies, can he live again? He then expressed faith that if he died, he would wait until relief from death would come, saying, "To Jehovah you will call, and I will answer you. You will yearn for the work of your hands." This was not just something Anita thought about toward the end of her life, but a hope that she shared with others throughout her life. Anita was born in 1963 in Paramaribo, Suriname. The family immigrated to the Netherlands while Anita was still very young, so she grew up in the vicinity of Amsterdam. Anita came to grow up with 5 siblings. Pictured here is the firstborn Henna. Then came Ivan and Jerry. Next came Anita, then Humphrey and Arnie. Anita, shown here between her parents, became a quick-thinking, quick-witted young adult with an inquisitive but independent mind, very quick to observe any discrepancies she might come across. This was evident in her love of learning. She had many different interests, but she settled on pursuing a degree in physical education and eventually enjoyed working as a personal sport trainer. Pictured here is Anita's immediate family as adults, with her parents to the left, and to the right, Anita is shown between her sister and 4 brothers. Although Anita was quite independent, she nevertheless had a deep and unconditional love for her family and for others that she came to love and trust. Despite the traveling Anita did over the years and the places she lived, she always had her family in mind and made it a point to call her mother daily, along with her sister, to check on how they and the family were doing. Anita also enjoyed all the children that were eventually born into the family, as pictured here with her niece Carmen. Anita was often seen interacting with her many nephews and nieces. She also worked especially well with young ones in her work and also the various foreign assignments she enjoyed. Besides her immediate family, Anita will certainly be missed by her many nephews, nieces, grandnephews, and grandnieces. A significant development in Anita's life began when Anita was around 10 years of age, as shown here. Her father, Armand, began studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses. Armand had lost his own mother when he was young and always wondered why people suffered and died. Yet he found standard answers given by the church dissatisfying. When he did find satisfying logical answers from the Bible, he began to bring his family along to the meetings of Jehovah's Witnesses, which had an impact on the direction that Anita would also eventually choose to take with her life. At the age of 14, Anita dedicated her life to Jehovah God, and so was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, as seen on the right. A few years after Anita's baptism, her family had returned to Suriname, but Anita became distracted by the events in her life at the time. And so failing to maintain her spirituality, she eventually found herself far away from her earlier spiritual goals and commitment toward her God Jehovah. At this point, Anita entered a dark and difficult period of her life. Anita eventually returned to the Netherlands in her 20s. Happily, the truth of Proverbs 22, verse 6 came true for her, which says, "Train up a child in the way she should go. Even when she grows old, she will not depart from it." Like the famous parable Jesus gave about the prodigal son, Anita began to return to Jehovah. she took up a deeper study of what she had learned as a child about Bible truth. This helped her to renew her relationship with Jehovah, and she returned to the protection of his organization. Nevertheless, Anita had many interests, so she had to choose the direction she would pursue while making her spiritual objectives a meaningful part of her life. Anita loved singing and had a beautiful voice, so she could have easily pursued music. She loved reading books and learning any number of things. In fact, she could really have enjoyed just living in her own library, pursuing higher education. And, as mentioned, Anita had a passion for sports. She particularly enjoyed horses and horseback riding, but eventually became a personal trainer, helping people to build themselves up physically, mentally, and nutritionally with her diet, physical exercise, and weight training. Nevertheless, Anita believed in the wisdom of the scripture at 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, which says, "For physical training or exercise is beneficial for a little, but godly devotion is beneficial for all things, as it holds promise of the life now and the life that is to come." Anita continued to value good physical health and exercise while balancing this with her devotion to God, but similar to a good personal sport trainer, Anita prioritized helping people personally to build up their relationship with Jehovah God by facilitating good spiritual nutrition and spiritual exercise with those who were teachable and willing to learn. Many people may seek a purposeful life in order to find satisfaction. For Anita, her greatest sense of joy and purpose came from helping others to find the road to an everlasting future, as she had discovered. Anita zealously promoted God's kingdom government as mankind's only hope and as the means to fulfill God's stated promises to end sickness and death and in bringing genuine peace to the earth. At the same time, Anita taught those willing people the value of the scriptures as a practical guide in their lives. And over the years, many did benefit greatly from her efforts. In contrast to the world that she had left behind, and with clarity of her purpose in mind and heart, Anita pursued the full-time ministry for the rest of her life, a period of around 30 years. Anita is pictured here with her first class of those who completed their first year in the full-time ministry. There would be many more schools to follow, which also helped her maintain focus on her activity. When Anita first started, she assisted in the Spanish field, but later settled into helping with the Chinese field in Amsterdam. To improve her Chinese, it was suggested she spend a year in a country where Chinese was often spoken. Of the countries she considered going to improve her Chinese, the Malaysian branch was quick to respond and immediately gave her an assignment in the Chinese field in the capital city of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So Anita ventured on her own to Malaysia with just enough funds to sustain her for a year. After a few months in Kuala Lumpur, Jehovah's Witnesses were trying to complete a new branch facility in Malacca, which they needed help on. So Anita accepted an invitation to assist the other volunteers with the construction to help complete the project on time. After the branch work was completed, Anita was reassigned to the Chinese field again, but this time to a small town called Muar in West Malaysia. Before returning to the Netherlands, Anita was asked if she would like to continue in Malaysia as a special full-time minister, which would require her putting in 140 hours per month in the ministry, but she would receive financial assistance to do so. Anita accepted and was assigned to work with a Chinese partner named Nadia, and so they were assigned to Miri, Sarawak in East Malaysia on the island of Borneo. They assisted the congregation for a couple of years until circumstances required that Anita be transferred to Kota Kinabalu, the capital of Sabah, East Malaysia, the northern Malaysian state on Borneo. In Kota Kinabalu, Anita appreciated the company of a new pioneer partner and flatmate named Michelle from Canada, and in also working along with the others in the Chinese and English congregations there. Kel also had been assigned to Kota Kinabalu, where he and Anita began dating. After 8 months of dating in Kota Kinabalu, Kel had problems with the renewal of his teaching permit, which required him to return to the United States. Shortly afterward, Anita was injured in a car accident whereby she returned to the Netherlands for recovery. Meanwhile, Anita and Kel continued their courtship online and visited each other in the Netherlands and the United States. And then Kel was introduced to Anita's family members in the Netherlands. On September 30th, 2000, Anita and Kel were married in Colorado, USA. The theme scripture they chose for their wedding was Psalm 52, verse 8, where King David wrote, "I will be like a luxuriant olive tree in God's house. My trust is in God's loyal love forever and ever." King David wished to be close to Jehovah and produce fruitage to God's praise. His future prospects depended on that. For a couple to thrive and become like a luxuriant olive tree involves a figurative pruning or a willingness to be trained within the marriage bond. Olive trees are also able to survive periods of drought because of their extensive root system. Similarly, a couple who are willing to fortify their spiritual root system will be able to endure any trial that may lay ahead. Trials did follow. Just 10 days after their wedding, Anita's father Armand, seen dancing with Anita here, suddenly passed away. This deeply affected Anita particularly since she was far from home. Armand had given a lovely speech at Anita and Kel's wedding regarding his thoughts on Psalm 52:8, and so the latter part of the scripture was put on the headstone of Armand's grave. My trust is in God's loyal love forever and ever. This thought also proved to be Anita's objective when life's difficulties overwhelmed her. Anita and Kel began their life together in Colorado, and they decided they would assist the Spanish-speaking field. Then in 2003, they had the opportunity to assist a newly formed congregation in Cuernavaca, Mexico. This new situation allowed them their first opportunity to serve full-time in the ministry as a couple. The encouragement they received from the zealous congregation in Mexico helped prepare them for the work ahead, and the activity became a helpful stepping stone to return to Southeast Asia once again. In 2005, Anita and Kel were invited back to Malaysia to serve together as special pioneers and were assigned to Kuala Lumpur in the Charis English congregation. The opportunity also arose to learn the Malay language, and the first Malay language group in Kuala Lumpur was formed. Other developments in Charis included the construction of a new kingdom hall, the establishment of a new Chinese congregation, a Myanmar group, and a Tamil group at that time. Around this time, Kuala Lumpur was receiving many students from Africa, many of whom were located in the southern part of Charis. In time, a new Charis South English congregation was formed, consisting mostly of these zealous young men and women from Africa. Anita always stepped in whenever she could to help with a project, such as with drama preparations as seen here, or assisting new Bible students on the school or in other practical ways. Anita worked well with all in the congregation, particularly the young ones in the congregation who were always drawn to her. A major assignment change happened in 2011 when Anita and Kel were assigned to Lahad Datu, a small town on the far east side of Sabah in East Malaysia on the island of Borneo, requiring them to move overseas. They had to leave their car behind in West Malaysia. It was too expensive to ship over. Now, on Borneo, everyone wants a four-wheel drive anyway. So at one point, when they only had bicycles to use, you can see from this picture, they now had a four-wheel drive after all. They were only in Lahad Datu for a period of 1.5 years, but so much happened during this short period. Much of the territory was rugged, palm oil plantations. Anita and Kel made special arrangements to bring public talks to the workers living on these plantations. Anita also supported the formation of a Chinese group by using her Chinese whenever possible in the field, and commenting during the meetings to help them get started. To accommodate the growing group, Anita helped to enlarge the meeting room for this arrangement and for another group that followed. Anita also supported the formation of a Filipino group by focusing on reaching those in the community who spoke the Filipino languages, besides continuing to contact those who spoke the common Malay language or English. Because of a military conflict in Lahad Datu at that time, Kel and Anita were reassigned to the Inanam Malay language congregation in Kota Kinabalu, where they came to be officially assigned for the next period of 7 years. Anita was always encouraged, but mostly by the progress of those she studied the Bible with. During this period, Anita supported the development of a Malaysian sign language group. Anita made good progress in learning the language so as to support the sign language meetings until the group was merged with another group in Kota Kinabalu. However, Anita's heart desire was always to attend Gilead, a school in New York, USA, that trains missionaries for 5 months to then be sent out internationally. But because she was already assigned to a foreign country, she never had that opportunity. Nevertheless, she eventually did have the chance to attend one of the abbreviated 2-month Gilead schools in Los Angeles called the Bible School for Christian Couples, now called the School for Christian Evangelizers. After completing the program, she returned to her congregation in Ananam. Another highlight in Anita's spiritual heritage was the arrangements for missionaries to attend international conventions, such as the one Anita attended in London in 2014. Being able to share in such programs with family members and other international delegates warmed Anita's heart to experience the unity of the international brotherhood and to see such love in action firsthand. The crowds are also delighted to welcome the missionaries home, as seen here, and they are encouraged by their self-sacrificing life of foreign service. Back in the Inanam Malay congregation, the language courses continued to help improve the efforts of foreigners to help better communicate within the congregation and in the field. Here we see that those who came to assist were from Japan, Singapore, Australia, the United States, Korea, and of course, the Netherlands. However, in 2016, another language training course was cut short when Anita received some bad news. At the time, Anita was just 53 and had been working hard to improve her health with diet and exercise. Then during a marathon that she ran, Anita experienced some pain that moved her to visit her doctor. She learned that she had a rare type of cancer called Leiomyosarcoma that has a poor prognosis. Sadly, a death sentence. Anita needed an operation immediately, but in Malaysia, the doctors were unwilling to consider performing the operation without blood. Fortunately for Anita, she had the backing of the Global Healthcare Department, set up through the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses to care for the health needs of those who are in special full-time service, such as Anita was. The Global Healthcare Desk in the Philippines, made up of volunteer Jehovah's Witness doctors, nurses, and management staff, warmly received us. They took care of all the arrangements for the operation in the local hospital. Nevertheless, it was certainly a stressful period from the time Anita found out she had a large tumor that needed to be removed to the actual day that the operation could be performed, which involved several days of preparations, with a good chance she was not going to survive the operation anyway. Meanwhile, as Anita's condition deteriorated, Anita kept up her spirits. She eagerly anticipated the arrival of some of her family members from the Netherlands and the United States. She also continued to focus on her spirituality with her prayers, listening into the meetings and singing kingdom songs together. She also was ever mindful of the opportunity to share something positive from the Bible with the hospital staff, which helped her to be positive while trying to encourage others. Pictured here are the surgeons who excitedly told us how well the operation went. They explained they were able to carefully wrap the large tumor and remove it completely without losing a significant amount of blood. Anita had renewed hope and time to plan her next medical strategies. Amazingly, Anita's family members were able to arrive from Europe in time for the operation and were able to stay through her initial recovery period. The branch office of the Philippines freely took care of all the hospitality for the family, providing 4 apartments, all the meals and transportation to and from the airport, for which the family was most grateful. After family members returned home, Anita had to be on chemotherapy for 6 months after the initial operation, but fortunately there was no evidence of disease for the next year and a half. Anita especially appreciated the caring manner of the medical personnel in the Philippines. In all the various medical facilities she visited, she appreciated how the doctors were exceptional in allowing her the time to ask questions and consider various options that contributed to her being able to eventually battle this type of cancer for the next 5 years. Anita also came to appreciate why nurses from the Philippines are highly sought after around the world for their kind, patient manner. They deserve much praise for the excellent competence they displayed in their field on behalf of others, such as Anita. Now, after completing chemotherapy, Anita returned to her assignment in Malaysia, but would fly into the Philippines for a follow-up checkup every 3 months. Jehovah's organization continued to care for all of this, but another benefit of being able to stay at the branch were the opportunities for encouragement from the other volunteers working there. When Anita was feeling well enough, she would volunteer to help in the laundry at the Philippines branch facility. There she met others like herself who were also coping with cancer. They often would come in after a CT scan, and if there were no changes, they would have the attitude they were good to go until the next scan. Some of them had been dealing with cancer for at least 10 years. This helped Anita not to worry too far ahead, while at the same time making the most of what she could do to improve her situation, rather to live constantly in dread of the next scan. After returning to Kota Kinabalu, a particularly nice blessing that came Anita's way during 2017 was that she was asked to decorate the interior of the Regional Translation Office in preparation for the upcoming dedication of this complex and the release of the new Malay translation of the Bible that was produced there. The decorating project was an intense 3-month project that was finished just in time for this most special event. Anita did an excellent job, and the project turned out to be a personal blessing, since all her energies were directed toward this project while giving Anita a 3-month break from having to even think about cancer. Unfortunately, though, at the beginning of 2018, a CT scan revealed that Anita's cancer had metastasized to her lungs. Anita had her first surgery on both her lungs in the Philippines, removing most of the tumors, but one tumor still remained as it couldn't be reached. So other options and technologies needed to be investigated in other countries to address the problem. Again, Global Healthcare lovingly cared for Anita and brought her to the Global Healthcare facility in Korea. Although Anita was not able to find suitable medical options in Korea for the period of the 3 months she was there, it certainly was an encouraging time to be at the Korean branch facility for Jehovah's Witnesses there. The legal department was winning court victories over our stand on neutrality after many years of legal battles and imprisonments of Jehovah's Witnesses. Since Anita was there, she was able to share in the court victory celebrations that ended many years of abuse of our brothers and the negative effects that it had on their families. Over 18,000 of our brothers there have experienced imprisonment, torture, and in some cases death during those difficult years. This lineup of young men were some of the last ones released early from prison and were visiting the branch while Anita was there. Of the hundreds of volunteers that work at this facility, the majority are men who have been through a Korean prison for their stand on neutrality at some point in their life. So during meal times, when everyone sits together in the dining rooms, the opportunity was there to hear about their prison experiences firsthand. Anita learned how each one of them had an own experience as to how Jehovah helped them to endure their persecution. This really encouraged Anita, as she was also in a type of prison, waiting on death row, as it were, while being entrapped by a terminal disease. Anita benefited from these experiences to better prepare herself spiritually to cope with her situation and that which was to come. Suitable options to remove the tumor that was left behind in her last surgery were not found in the Philippines or Korea. Since Anita needed a special kind of laser surgery that was available in Germany, and because Global Healthcare had established a new department at their Central European branch in Germany, Anita was transferred there. Here she is pictured with some of her support team. Anita had major surgery on both of her lungs in Dresden and then returned to the Central European branch to continue her recovery. Once recovered, Anita again was able to enjoy the field ministry with fellow volunteers and also participated in welcoming guests to the 2019 International Convention being held in Frankfurt. As you can see on the right, she was ever keeping in mind her assignment as she pointed the visitors to where her official assignment was in Malaysia. Kindly, the Society allowed Anita to return to Malaysia for a period of 5 weeks to be with her congregation in East Malaysia after her recovery from surgery. Here, Anita and Kel were warmly greeted on arrival by many from the congregations at the Kota Kinabalu airport. In those weeks back home, Anita was able to enjoy being out in the Malaysian field once again. She also enjoyed the encouragement she received given by branch representatives visiting the missionaries at the time, along with association with the Brotherhood there. Here, the Kitchen family from Canada, who are supporting the work in Sabah, gave Kel and Anita a warm send-off at the Kota Kinabalu airport on their way to attend the 2019 Love Never Fails International Conventions in Brazil and the Netherlands. As it turned out, though, this was to be the last time Anita would be able to return to her beloved assignment in Malaysia. Here, Anita arrives in Sao Paulo, Brazil, to a warm welcome. The joyful spirit, the color, the music, and dancing, along with the sights to see, was a memorable break from her ongoing battle with sickness. As Anita said, it must have been one of the biggest parties on earth, with over 36,600 in attendance. Here, Anita is pictured with the host family that took such good care of us. Anita enjoyed such conventions as a way to better know the local culture and people firsthand, and to feel the love and unity that our global unified brotherhood makes possible with such arrangements. Such international events, organized every few years, also give the missionaries an opportunity to catch up with their families after being away from them for sometimes years at a time. For example, Anita's brother Humphrey and his wife Yvonne, pictured here, have volunteered for many years at the Suriname branch facility for Jehovah's Witnesses in Suriname, a country located just above Brazil. The arrangement allowed for Anita and Kel to meet Humphrey and Yvonne in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Since Anita was in South America for the Sao Paulo Convention, her aunt Ingrid sponsored Anita and Kel to also fly to Suriname, the country where Anita was born, while they were in the region. This enabled Anita to also be able to spend time with such families as her beloved Aunt Alina. Anita and Humphrey had a special bond as children. It was especially good to see them together again in Suriname, where Humphrey had also pursued the full-time ministry all these years. And of course, it was good for Kel to see Suriname too. As one of the international delegates invited to attend the convention, Anita proudly represented those she served in Malaysia by wearing the traditional clothes of the Rengus people of Sabah, some of whom attended our congregation in Kota Kinabalu. After South America, Anita was also able to attend the same international convention with her family in the Netherlands before returning to Germany to continue her search for treatment. At the time that Anita and Kel first arrived in Germany, their fellow missionaries from Malaysia, Peter and Linda, seen here with Kel and Anita, had also arrived for treatment, as Linda was also fighting her own battle with cancer. The four of them greatly appreciated being together and supporting each other through their difficult ordeal. Sadly, Linda predeceased Anita over a year before Anita passed away, and after Linda's death, the three of them continued to be an invaluable support to each other. As months passed, the world found themselves in lockdown due to the spread of the coronavirus. The meetings and activities of Jehovah's Witnesses moved online. This was wonderful for Anita, as she was once again felt connected to her official assignment and her congregation in Malaysia via Zoom for a period of 8 months. You can see her in color on the lower right, joining the Zoom meetings in Malaysia from Germany. Then in October 2020, it was decided by headquarters that Kel and Anita would be reassigned to the Netherlands as special pioneers to serve with the English group in Utrecht. The move from Germany was timely, as it allowed Anita to be close to her family while pursuing new treatment options. At the same time, being able to support the English group in Utrecht for the better part of a year was spiritually encouraging for both Anita and Kel. In this last meal that Anita was able to prepare for some of her family in her own home in the Netherlands, the meal she prepared was, of course, something from Malaysia. Her time in Southeast Asia will forever remain in her heart. In the final stages of Anita's sickness, Anita was thankful for the practical help she received from her brother Jerry, who helped her access important medical opinions from the Amsterdam Medical Center, along with other integrative support that gave her some relief. She was also thankful for the attention she received at the Turhoy Hilversum Hospital and the Cayenne Hospice, served by the so many helpful volunteers that worked there. Anita was grateful to be able to receive her family in such a peaceful setting and to be able to privately say her goodbyes to them. The picture on the right was taken with her grandnephews who visited her at the hospital. They shared this comforting scripture from Psalm 3, verse 5. I will lie down and sleep, and I will wake up in safety, for Jehovah continues to support me. Anita fell asleep in death peacefully on the 23rd of September, 2021. Anita agreed with the statement that man really lives just long enough to show where he stands on the challenges made in history toward God's right to rule, as this issue has to be settled effectively before true peace and security or personal salvation could be realized under God's kingdom government. Since God's intelligent creatures were created with free will as subjects of his rulership, each one would need to show where they stood on that issue. Anita finished that race successfully and is now in God's memory the best place to be. Anita hoped that all who touched her life would realize the same hope as she did, so that all could be together again soon when that kingdom restores paradise to the earth and when all those who are in God's memory are resurrected. Anita would naturally encourage anyone with such questions about life and death to be humble enough to be teachable and to research those promises as she did when she first started out as a young adult returning from Suriname over 30 years ago. If Anita couldn't have helped someone personally, she would have directed them to the website jw.org to seek such answers to life's important questions themselves and to take positive action while there is time to do so. The song Kel has chosen to conclude this documentary about Anita's life is called Fields of Gold and was originally written by the songwriter Sting. It's interesting, Sting said about the song that in England, our house is surrounded by barley, and in the summer it's fascinating to watch the wind moving across the shimmering surface like waves on an ocean of gold. Lovers have made promises here, I'm sure, their bonds strengthened by the comforting cycle of the seasons. It's a story about courtship, marriage, and lastly, death. The two people in the song meet, they court, and fall in love, but eventually death separates them. But his lover will always remember their time together. Whenever he thinks of her, she wants to be remembered while she walks in fields of gold or barley. For Kel, the wording has special meaning because fields of gold actually signify that it's a time for harvest. Now, Jesus himself indicated that the fields were white for harvesting, and that meant the crowds of people, that his disciples would go out and teach and harvest into God's house. The wind that is seen to blow over these fields of gold also reminds Kel of God's Holy Spirit guiding and directing that spiritual harvest today. Now, when Jesus set out on a tour of all the cities and villages, teaching and preaching about the good news of the kingdom, he noticed the crowds were skinned and thrown about like sheep without a shepherd. Because the religious leaders of his day had failed the people, they were without hope. He then said to his disciples, yes, The harvest is great, but the workers are few. Therefore, beg the master of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." When Anita and Kel set out on their life together, they took to heart the words Jesus said at John 4:34, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Look, I say to you, lift up your eyes and view the fields. They are white for harvesting. Already the reaper is receiving his wages and gathering fruit for everlasting life, so that the sower and the reaper may rejoice together." In writing about the line in the song that says, "We'll forget the sun in his jealous sky as we lie in fields of gold," the songwriter said it meant that the couple's romance was so strong that even the sky or heaven is jealous of their relationship, a jealous sky. From a scriptural view, this sky or heaven represents the corrupt authorities that rule over the world of mankind. 1 John chapter 5, verse 19 says the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. And Revelation 12:17 continues by saying, "So the dragon became enraged and went off to wage war with the remaining ones who observe the commandments of God and have the work of bearing witness concerning Jesus." Throughout her life, Anita experienced that sun or heat of persecution in the jealous sky that did burn down on her when she found protection being busy in those fields of gold. The lyrics go on to say, "But I swear in the days still left, we'll walk in fields of gold." In the closing months of Anita's life, she made good that promise to use her remaining time to walk in those fields of gold, as she made every effort with the strength she had to encourage others spiritually. Anita never had children of her own, but the song mentions, "See the children run as the sun goes down among the fields of gold." Anita did have many spiritual offspring that she loved and was proud of. So the words of this song also include all and each of you who became part of Anita's spiritual heritage. Whenever you think of her, she will want to be remembered while she walked in those fields of gold. Anita's life, together with Kel, centered on working those fields of gold together. It was her ardent desire to have another chance to be together again with Kel, along with all those who joined her in this harvest work. 21 years ago on their wedding day, their first dance together was to the song "You Sang to Me" by Mark Antony. You're now about to hear Ava Cassidy's beautiful rendition of the song "Fields of Gold," which she recorded while she herself had stage 4 cancer. The emotion she carries across in the song reminds Kel of Anita and how she sang to him. Despite their tragedy, he's ever grateful for what they were able to do together in those fields of gold during all the important harvest season of our day. We're now going to conclude with that song and its music video.
You remember me when the west wind moves among the fields of barley. You can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. So she took her love for to gaze a while among the fields of barley. In his arms she fell as her hair came down among the fields of gold. Will you stay with me? Will you be my love among the fields of barley? And you can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. I never made promises like I swear in the days still left, we'll walk in fields of gold. We'll walk in fields of gold. Some that I've broken, but I swear in the days still left, we'll walk in fields of gold. We'll walk in fields of gold. Since those summer days among the fields of barley, see the children run as the sun goes down, as you lie in fields of gold. You remember me when the west wind moves among the fields of barley. You can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold.